In 1990, Donald Trump was broke. Not Hollywood broke. Not I had to sell a vacation home. Broke. He owed nearly $3 billion to his creditors. His casinos were hemorrhaging cash. His airline was grounded. His yacht was being repossessed. 99 banks were threatening to foreclose on everything he had ever built. His own personal net worth was estimated at negative $900 million. The man who had once appeared on the cover of Time magazine as the symbol of American excess, the gold towers, the helicopters, the casinos, was technically, mathematically, almost incomprehensibly poorer than someone with nothing in their pocket at all. Most people in that position disappear. They take the settlement. They start over somewhere quiet. They accept that the world has moved on. Donald Trump did not disappear. Within a decade, he had restructured his debt, rebuilt his fortune, launched one of the most watched television franchises in American history, and begun the slow, improbable march toward the most powerful office in the world. This is the story of a man who turned failure into brand, collapse into comeback, and controversy into unstoppable momentum. Welcome to Visionary Chronicles. To understand Donald Trump, you have to go back to the beginning, not to the towers or the casinos or the television sets, but to a small house in Queens, New York, where a boy watched his father build an empire one brick at a time and decided that was not enough. What you're about to hear is a story full of contradictions. A man who inherited wealth and called himself self-made. A man who lost everything and called it a learning experience. A man who was dismissed as a joke by the political establishment and then won the presidency of the United States. Whatever your politics, whatever your view of this figure, the trajectory of his life raises questions about ambition, branding, resilience, and the nature of power that are impossible to ignore. Stay with us, because the lessons buried inside this story are about more than one man. They are about what it means to refuse to accept the story the world has written about you. On June 14, 1946, Frederick Christ Trump and his wife, Mary Anne MacLeod Trump, welcomed their fourth child into the world at Jamaica Hospital in Queens, New York. They named him Donald John Trump. Fred Trump was not a casual businessman. He was a disciplined, hard-driving, deeply methodical real estate developer who had built his first house at the age of 21 and never really stopped. By the time Donald was born, Fred was already one of the largest builders of low and middle-income housing in New York City. His company, Trump Village, would eventually construct tens of thousands of apartments across Brooklyn and Queens. He was not flashy. He did not seek headlines. He worked. He saved. He reinvested. He built. His son watched all of this very closely. Growing up in Jamaica Estates, a wealthy neighborhood in Queens, Donald attended the Q Forest School. By his own account, he was difficult to manage, energetic, combative, and relentlessly competitive. He has said that, even in second grade, he punched his music teacher in the face because he thought the man didn't know what he was talking about. His parents, concerned about his behavior and energy, enrolled him at the New York Military Academy at age 13. Military school transformed him. The structure, the hierarchy, the competition, Donald thrived in it. He became a star athlete, excelling in baseball and football. He became captain of the baseball team and was scouted by the Philadelphia Phillies. He learned in that environment what he already suspected, that dominance was a skill that could be practiced and refined. He enrolled at Fordham University in the Bronx before transferring to the Wharton School of Finance at the University of Pennsylvania, then, as now, one of the most prestigious business programs in the country. He graduated in 1968 with a degree in economics. He was 22 years old. He had a business education, a father who was one of New York's largest developers, and a hunger that no classroom had been able to satisfy. He went to work for his father's company, Elizabeth Trump and Son, almost immediately. And almost immediately, he began to think bigger than Queens. Manhattan was where the action was. And Manhattan, in the early 1970s, was in crisis. The city was nearly bankrupt. Crime was exploding. The middle class was fleeing to the suburbs. Real estate in the borough's core was depressed, undervalued, and deeply unfashionable. To Donald Trump, it looked like opportunity. In 1973, he negotiated his first major Manhattan deal, the purchase and renovation of the Commodore Hotel, a decaying Grand Dame of Midtown that sat next to Grand Central Terminal and had fallen into such disrepair that it was embarrassing the city. Trump partnered with Hyatt Hotels and negotiated a 40-year tax abatement from New York City, a deal that critics called outrageous, but which Trump recognized as the lever he needed. The hotel was renamed the Grand Hyatt. It was a hit. Trump was 27 years old. Then came Trump Tower. In 1983, Trump opened his signature building, a 58-story glass and bronze skyscraper on Fifth Avenue in Midtown Manhattan. It had a 6-story atrium, a waterfall, and retail space occupied by Tiffany's and other luxury brands. Trump did not just build it. He turned it into a statement. He put his name on it in 6-foot brass letters. He moved into the penthouse. He made the building itself into a character. That was the insight that separated Donald Trump from his father and from most real estate developers of his generation. He understood that the brand was the product, that visibility was a form of capital, that getting your name on the front page was, in certain markets, worth more than the building behind it. Through the 1980s, he expanded aggressively: the Plaza Hotel, Trump's Castle Casino in Atlantic City, the Taj Mahal, which he billed as the 8th wonder of the world, Trump Shuttle, an airline that operated the lucrative New York-Boston-Washington corridor. He published The Art of the Deal in 1987, which became one of the best-selling business books in American history and transformed him from a real estate developer into a national celebrity. Then it all crashed. The recession of the late 1980s and early 1990s devastated the real estate and casino markets simultaneously. Trump had leveraged his expansion almost entirely on debt, billions in bonds and bank loans that assumed the good times would continue. They didn't. By 1990, the Taj Mahal alone was struggling to service its $950 million in junk bond debt. Trump's other casinos were in trouble. His airline was bleeding cash at a rate no management decision could stop. 99 banks owed a combined total of approximately $3.4 billion, began coordinating to prevent a total collapse. At one point, Trump and his then-wife Ivana walked past a homeless man on Fifth Avenue. He turned to Ivana and said, "That man has $8 billion more than I do." He wasn't entirely joking. The banks chose not to foreclose, not out of generosity, but because they had calculated that a controlled restructuring would recover more value than a chaotic liquidation. Trump negotiated. He gave up the airline. He gave up the yacht. He surrendered equity in several properties. He accepted an allowance, literally a monthly living allowance, while the restructuring played out. It was humiliating by any normal measure. He called it a blip. He called it a learning experience. He called it, with the serene self-assurance that defined him, a great education. And then he got back to work. The comeback was slower than the rise, and in many ways more impressive. Through the mid-1990s, Trump rebuilt methodically. He refinanced his remaining properties, brought in professional casino management, sold non-core assets, and focused relentlessly on the one thing that had always been his most durable asset: his name. The Trump brand, even at its lowest point, carried a kind of gravitational pull. People still wanted to live in Trump buildings. They still wanted to see Trump's name in the papers. Licensing his name to developers who wanted the prestige attached to it became an increasingly significant part of his business model. Trump Towers appeared in cities across America and around the world, in Panama, in the Philippines, in Turkey, without Trump actually owning the underlying real estate. He was, in effect, selling the idea of Trump as much as the buildings themselves. In 2004, NBC gave him a platform unlike anything the real estate world had ever seen. The Apprentice. The show took Trump's mythology, the gold office, the boardroom, the two words that became a catchphrase, and delivered it to tens of millions of Americans every week. At its peak, The Apprentice drew 28 million viewers per episode. Trump became, in the homes of ordinary Americans, something more than a businessman. He became a character, an archetype, the ultimate boss. He used that platform skillfully. He licensed his name more aggressively. He opened golf courses in Scotland, in Ireland, in New Jersey, in Florida. He launched Trump University, Trump Steaks, Trump Vodka, Trump Magazine. Not all of them succeeded, but the cumulative effect was to keep the name in motion, in conversation, in culture. Then, in June 2015, he rode down an escalator in Trump Tower and announced that he was running for President of the United States. The political establishment laughed. Pollsters gave him a 2% chance of winning the Republican nomination. The editorial boards of major newspapers wrote dismissive columns. His Republican rivals underestimated him. The Democratic Party underestimated him. The media, which could not stop covering him because his presence guaranteed ratings, inadvertently amplified him at every turn. On November 8, 2016, Donald Trump was elected the 45th President of the United States, defeating Hillary Clinton in an electoral college result that shocked virtually every professional in American politics. He became the first person in American history to win the presidency with no prior political or military experience. He was 70 years old. He had rebuilt a fortune that Forbes estimated at well over $2 billion. He had produced one of the most watched television shows in America for a decade. And he had, by nearly every conventional measure, achieved what no one thought was possible. In 2024, after a term in office, an election loss, a criminal indictment, several criminal indictments, and a conviction that made him the first former U.S. president to be found guilty of felony crimes, he ran again, and won again, becoming the 47th President of the United States, the first since Grover Cleveland to serve non-consecutive terms. Whatever history ultimately concludes about his presidency, his politics, or his character, the arc of his life is, by any objective standard, extraordinary. So what can we take from the story of Donald Trump, a figure so polarizing that even his name provokes a reaction before his story is heard? The lessons are not simple, and they are not an endorsement of every choice he made, but they are real. The first lesson is about brand as armor. In the business world, reputation is fragile. Most people who lose everything at the scale Trump lost it in 1990 never recover, not because they lack ability, but because the market stops believing in them. Trump survived in part because he had built a brand so synonymous with winning, with success, with audacity, that the gap between the brand and the reality was almost impossible for the public to process. He understood something that few people articulate clearly, that narrative precedes fact in the minds of most people. Control the story, control the outcome. The second lesson is about resilience in the face of catastrophic failure. $3 billion in debt, an allowance, 99 creditors. Most people would not have come back from that, not because they couldn't, but because they would have accepted it as a verdict. Trump refused to accept it as a verdict. He treated it as a setback. The distinction between those two interpretations is, in a very real sense, the difference between coming back and not. The third lesson is about visibility. Trump's father built one of the largest real estate empires in New York, and almost no one outside the industry knew his name. His son built a smaller empire, but made his name globally recognizable. Invisibility is not humility. In business, in public life, in any arena where attention is a resource, the person the world cannot look away from has an advantage the person in the shadows does not. The fourth lesson, and perhaps the most uncomfortable one, is about the power of certainty. Right or wrong, Donald Trump has never visibly doubted himself in public. In a world full of hesitation and qualification, that kind of certainty is magnetic. It is also dangerous. Certainty without wisdom is recklessness, but certainty paired with relentless effort has, throughout his life, moved mountains that people told him could not be moved. The story of Donald Trump is not a clean story. It is not a straight line from struggle to triumph. It is a story full of wreckage and contradiction and moments that demand moral reckoning. But it is also, undeniably, a story about a man who refused, again and again, to accept the world's verdict that he was finished. And that refusal, whatever you think of the man himself, is worth understanding. This has been Visionary Chronicles.